This is such a happy place to be. I don't know why I'm even here talking about how to be happy. But how do you say, how many of you want to be happy? And how many of you are happy? Pretty much. A little bit fewer hands the second time. How many people don't know if they're happy or not? Okay. Well, maybe by the end of this talk, we'll have a somewhat different show of hands. Aristotle said, happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. So, wow, it sure sounds like happiness is important. So I decided to do some research to learn about happiness. What is happiness? How can I find happiness? How can I maximize happiness? And how do I even know if I'm happy or not? I looked at science, literature, philosophy, and the wisdom of people of great renown, especially renowned humanists and UUs, and I was looking to them for the answer to these questions. I came up with 15 rules of happiness. And rule number 1, happiness comes in all sizes. My first conclusion is that happiness doesn't have an on-off button. It's a continuum of emotion. And roughly in ascending order, we have content, pleased, tickled, joyful, overjoyed, merry, blissful, thrilled, elated, euphoric, ecstatic, delirious, rhapsodic, and on cloud 9, and finally in seventh heaven. Because I put that last because what could be happier than being in heaven? So we have so many words for happy. Happiness is obviously very important to us. However, we want to be at the beginning of that continuum of emotion and not at its highest point. Because who wants to go around being deliriously happy all the time? Personally, I think it would wear me out. Plus, I'd never get anything done. I don't know about you, but when I'm feeling deliriously happy, I pretty much can't focus on anything except how deliriously happy I am. And delirious is also a word that we use when we want to say that someone is out of their mind. So no, I don't want to be deliriously happy all the time. And my research shows that a lot of other people agree with me. Doug Lawson is a frequently quoted journalist. He summed it up when he wrote, "The world was full of people looking for spectacular happiness while they snub contentment." The author J.D. Salinger said, "Happiness is a solid and joy is a liquid." I think he was speaking to the transient nature of heightened emotions like joy. You can't hold on to them. So when we say we want to be happy, perhaps what we mean is that we don't want to be unhappy. And this is rule number 2. Happiness could just simply be the absence of unhappiness. This is a Peanuts comic that I clipped out. Can you all read it? Okay, well, he says, Charlie says, "What do you want most out of life, Charlie Brown, to be happy?" "Oh, no, I don't really expect that. I just don't want to be unhappy." So seek contentment, not euphoria. And when you think about it, just being in a state of contentment is a pretty high achievement. You are lucky if you are happy. Think of the words happenstance and haphazard. The prefix hap is used in both of them, and to me, that suggests that happiness is lucky. And using mood surveys, researchers have found that at any random moment, about 70% of the people that say that they are feeling okay. In other words, they're content, perhaps happy. So to be happy 70% of the time, I call that lucky. Now rule number 3, inherit the happiness gene. Our degree of happiness, at least according to some scientists, may be biologically determined. In effect, we are born that way. To quote Lady Gaga, in a slightly different context. Hedonics is the science of pleasure and happiness. Natural selection may have shaped our psychological dispositions. We evolved for survival and reproduction, and we got happiness as a byproduct. Happiness helps survival because it gives us a way to live, and it helps us form social bonds. And as for reproduction, well, I've heard a lot of people say that engaging in the primary means of reproduction makes them very happy. Some scientists think that happiness is genetic. Perhaps we are all born with a happiness quotient, and that no matter what happens, good or bad, we will feel high or low for a while, and then we'll revert to our set point. Now that could be depressing. But just like our IQ scores, that can be improved if we work at it. We can improve overall happiness if we work at it. Happiness might be like the weather in Florida. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. So if you're not feeling happy right now, you might feel happy in an hour or so. Biology affects our happiness, but happiness may also affect our biology. People who say they are happy live 35% longer. Scientists say there is a strong correlation, but they can't say that there's a direct cause and effect. But I think it makes sense. Our own experience tells us that happiness fosters physical well-being, and unhappiness takes a toll on our body. We all know that unhappiness can affect the immune system and cause us to feel sick. Rule number 4, seek out a pleasant environment. Like here, very pleasant environment here, as our earlier speaker attested. Environment affects our happiness. So what is the best environment for happiness? Well, scientists have discovered that we have evolved to find certain environmental features attractive. We like to be on a hill with a view of a landscape. We like to be able to see but not be seen. We like to be near water. Streams are handy when you're thirsty. We like low canopy trees for shade and protection. And we like to be near animals because if there are animals in the area, it shows that the area is habitable. Windowless, natureless, isolated offices full of cubicles goes against human nature. A study of patients hospitalized for gallbladder surgery compared those whose rooms looked out on a park with those who did not have an outside view. The park view patients used less pain medication, had shorter stays, and complained less to their nurses. So we live in Florida, and we're very lucky to have a beautiful environment and pleasant weather throughout the year. People who live in areas with cold winters and early darkness and late sunrises sometimes fall victim to a malady called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. It seems that our bodies need a certain amount of sunlight each day, or chemical changes within our body will cause our mood to suffer. So spend a little time outdoors every day. Rule number 5, have enough money. Now notice I said enough money, not lots of money. Money can buy happiness, but only to a limited extent. Researchers have found that up to a point, money is correlated with happiness. It's hard to be happy if you don't have enough money to live comfortably, if you don't have a decent place to live, if you don't have enough food to eat, and maybe a little money left over for some fun. Right now in the United States, it takes about $60,000 to be happy, $60,000 a year. Now, I'm not saying you can be happy if you don't have $60,000 a year. But I'm just saying that they found that there's a correlation between income and happiness. So as income rises, the happiness line goes up, steady with it, if you were to put it on a graph. But when you reach an income of $60,000, happiness stays constant even though income is going up. So even multi-million dollar lottery winners are no happier than the rest of us once the euphoria of winning wears off. So having a lot of stuff does not make us happy. Yes, we can enjoy a luxury car, a flat screen TV, but like a kid with a new toy, the thrill wears off. And it's nice to have these things, but they don't contribute very much to happiness. In fact, the pursuit of material things can make us unhappy. When we spend a lot of time longing for things that we can't have, then the focus is on the negative. The Stoic Greek philosopher Epictetus said, "A man should so live that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things." Rule number 6, think happy thoughts. One way to be happy is to think happy thoughts while banishing negative thoughts. This is why a lot of wise people recommend positive thinking. Seneca, a philosopher of ancient Greece, said, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is." And the inverse is also true. We are as happy as we think we are. Abraham Lincoln said, "Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be." Ray Bradbury, the famous author for his science fiction writings, said, "You can make yourself happy or miserable. It takes the same amount of effort." Now don't worry, be happy. That's a quote from a song written by Bobby McFerrin. And it was taken from the words of an Indian sage, Meher Baba, and it became popular in the 1960s. I think it means that we should avoid excessive worry if we want to be happy. I came upon an adage for this. Worry doesn't help tomorrow's troubles, but it does ruin today's happiness. Many years ago, I coined this expression. It's not a problem until it's a problem. This is what I used to tell the people in my office who work for me when they come, "Oh, everything's falling apart, we've got so many problems, what are we going to do?" It's not a problem until it's a problem. And what I meant about that is don't worry about all the things that might go wrong, but instead have faith that when something does go wrong, when it's actually gone wrong, not prior to, when you're anticipating it going wrong, well, have confidence that you will find a way to deal with that problem. And that's a much longer way of saying, don't worry, be happy. Now, I'm not saying that we should all be Pollyannas and refuse to see reality and refuse to plan for adversity. I'm just warning against letting worry be your dominant mode. Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian writer, who never particularly struck me as a happy person, but he still cautions about worry. He says, "Man is fond of counting his troubles, but he does not count his joys. If he counted them up as he ought to, he would see that every lot has enough happiness provided for it." Rule number 7, cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Arthur C. Clarke, a science fiction writer and humanist, knew the importance of gratitude. He said, "In our daily lives, we must see that it is not happiness that makes us grateful, but gratefulness that makes us happy." And the great philosopher, Oprah Winfrey, she also urges gratitude. She suggests keeping a gratitude journal. Oprah believes that focusing on a feeling of gratitude will help you to be a more positive person and to attract good things into your life. She wrote that the more thankful I became, the more my bounty increased. And that's because what you focus on expands. And when you focus on the goodness in your life, you create more of it. So whatever your circumstances are, I'm sure there are many things that you can be grateful for. So start that gratitude journal. Take a few minutes each day to write down the things you are grateful for. Rule number 8, do things that you enjoy. St. Augustine said, "Man wishes to be happy, even when he so lives as to make happiness impossible. Do not live in such a way that happiness is impossible. It's another way of saying that if you want to be happy, do things that make you happy. Now that's simple, right? But how often do we stay in a job that we hate, or do things that we don't like to do just because we think we ought to do them? Sometimes we even socialize with people who we don't especially like because we think we should. And maybe we need to think about those things and try to do more of the things that we enjoy. Eleanor Roosevelt said, happiness is not a goal, it is a byproduct. So if you're in a job that you don't like, well, think about how you might get a job doing something that you do like. And to sum it up, find the activities and the situations that you enjoy, and then make time for these activities. Because all work and no play makes Jack an unhappy boy. Rule number 9, enjoy the things you do. Sometimes we have to do things that we don't enjoy, but we can train ourselves to find the joy in everything we do. I call it finding the joy. When my son would complain about something I was making him do, I would tell him, find the joy. He'd just scowl at me and mutter and go in his room. But maybe I'll have better luck here. And that you can find the joy, that any task, no matter how difficult or unpleasant, there can always be joy in it. For instance, sometimes I had to mow the lawn. Maybe some of you have to do a chore like that, or clean the house or whatever. And it, mowing the lawn is not especially fun, but I would try to find the joy. I would enjoy the feeling of my muscles pushing that mower. I'm getting stronger. By the time this is done, I'm going to be stronger. I would enjoy the sun shining. I would enjoy the smell of the grass. And I would enjoy thinking about that nice cool glass of lemonade that was waiting for me in the house when I was done. Albert Schweitzer, a New You, said, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. Rule number 10, work hard. Now that sounds a little counterintuitive. Because aren't we happiest when we go on vacation, and when we can just sit on the beach, or we can play golf, or tennis, or whatever, the activities are that we love doing. But it kind of gets old fast. Real and lasting happiness comes from achievement, and achievement usually takes hard work. Franklin D. Roosevelt said, happiness lies in the joy of achievement and the thrill of creative effort. Henry Ford concurred, there is joy in work. There is no happiness except in the realization that we have accomplished something. Now, perhaps work gets a bad rap because it is something we have to do even when we'd rather be doing something else. Dr. Samuel Johnson, the 18th century essayist, understood this well. He said, labor, if it was not necessary for existence, would be indispensable to the happiness of man. And there's a well-known saying that is attributed to many different people. Life is what happens when you're busy doing something else. So I can change this just a little and say, happiness happens when you are busy doing something else. Rule number 11, be a good person. Do good, be kind, be generous. Do not steal, lie, cheat. Don't be evil, as they say at Google. Although Google seems to be getting more and more evil. The proverb says, virtue is its own reward, and that reward is happiness. That's my conclusion, and Aristotle agrees with me. He said that happiness comes from the perfect practice of virtue. Paul Kurtz was the founder of the Humanist organization, the Center for Inquiry, among other organizations, and also the author of over 50 books on humanism. He coined the term eupraxiphy. The word is based on the Greek words for good, practice, and wisdom. It emphasizes the importance of living an ethical life and suggests that ethics is the key to attaining happiness. Now, Ogden Nash is one of my favorite poets because he uses his poetry to make humorous comments on life, but also very wise comments. And he wrote, "There is only one way to achieve happiness on this terrestrial ball, and that is to have a clear conscience or none at all." Rule number 12, focus on love, kindness, and compassion. We're all going to have negative emotions sometimes, and it's a healthy reaction to some things. However, we should try to work through anger and replace it with emotions like love, compassion, and forgiveness. Because anger and bitterness and thoughts of revenge do not make us feel happy. But love, compassion, and forgiveness do bring happiness. Oliver Wendell Holmes, a former Supreme Court Justice, and also a UU, he expressed it best. He said, "Love is the master key that opens the gates of happiness." The Dalai Lama urged compassion. He said, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." And that's right in line with our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion for others. The poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, also a UU, warned against anger. He said, "For every minute you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness." To maximize happiness, minimize anger. Loving, showing compassion, these are the feelings that make us happy. Rule number 13, make other people happy. There's an anonymous adage, in seeking happiness for others, you find it for yourself. Robert G. Ingersoll, the famous orator and humanist, recognized the important role that making other people happy plays in our own happiness when he said, "Happiness is the only good. The time to be happy is now. The place to be happy is here. The way to be happy is to make others so." Ralph Waldo Emerson, the famous poet, seconded the motion when he poetically said, "Happiness is the perfume you can't pour on others without getting a little on yourself." The Dalai Lama said, "We begin from the recognition that all beings cherish happiness and do not want suffering. It then becomes both morally wrong and pragmatically unwise to pursue only one's own happiness, oblivious to the feelings and aspirations of all others who surround us as members of the same human family. The wiser course is to think of happiness when pursuing our own happiness." Even Karl Marx had something to say on the subject. The most happy is the one who has made the most people happy. Rule number 14, accept unhappiness. Sometimes you're going to be unhappy. Accept it. How would we even know what happiness was if it wasn't for the ability to compare it with unhappiness? So if you are unhappy, ride it out. Happiness will return, and your acceptance of the unhappiness will hasten the return of the happiness. In short, if you are unhappy about not being happy, then you won't be happy. Listen to the advice of the American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He's also a UU. "Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds the sun is shining. The fate is the common fate of all. Into each life a little rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary." And rule number 15, don't seek happiness. People people who are obsessed with finding happiness almost never find it. Throughout history, many philosophers and writers have observed that seeking happiness and trying to determine if you are happy or not will only lead to unhappiness. C.P. Snow, an English physicist and writer, said, "If you pursue happiness, you will never find it." John Stuart Mill said, "Ask yourself whether you are happy, and you will cease to be so." George Bernard Shaw, the famous English playwright, warned against thinking about happiness. He said, "The only way to avoid being miserable is not to have enough leisure to wonder whether you are happy or not." Edith Wharton, a Pulitzer Prize-winning American writer, said, "If only we'd stop trying to be happy, we could have a pretty good time." The writer and poet Henry David Thoreau, who's also a UU, said it beautifully. "Happiness is like a butterfly. The more you chase it, the more it eludes you. But if you turn your attention to other things, it comes and sits softly on your shoulder." And even before I read those words by Henry David Thoreau, I wrote a poem about happiness, perhaps not quite as good as Henry David Thoreau, but you can decide. And I call it Capturing Happiness. When I was a child, my father blew smoke rings from his cigarette. I would try to catch them on my finger, and I could almost do it before the smoke would disappear. Thinking about this, it occurs to me that happiness is like smoke. Not the acrid smoke from a cigarette, but the sweet smoke that arises from an incense stick. There it is, so enticingly close, curling through the air. It's mine if I can take it. I reach out my hand, fingers outstretched, and I close my fist around it. And when I open my hand, nothing is there. If I want happiness, I must hold still and let it come to me. I cannot seek happiness. I cannot grab it and keep it like a treasured souvenir. I must have an inner stillness, letting go of stress and anxiety, and then happiness will settle over me. Breathing it in, smelling it, tasting it, letting it settle on my skin, letting it soak into my hair, and then I have it. It is part of me. So just sum it all up and put it all together. Our happiness, to some extent, is a matter of luck. Our happiness is sometimes out of our control, a matter of genetics, predisposition, good fortune, or misfortune that the universe sends our way. Nonetheless, there are a lot of things we can do to increase the happiness in our lives, as long as we remember that happiness is a byproduct of the choices we make in life. So here is my final bonus rule. The last rule: be happy. See, don't try to be happy, just be happy.